Good afternoon. Welcome back to another edition of the B&H Virtual Event Space. You are tuned in to turn your love of photos into a business with the photo managers. And if you haven't been
Good
here
afternoon.
every
Welcome back to
Tuesday,
another
and
edition
of the B&H Virtual Event Space.
There
You are
we
tuned
go.
in to
See,
turn
it
your
was
love
only
of
a matter
photos.
of time.
Barbie, I did that to make you feel more comfortable. I left my loop back turned on just to show you we all make the mistakes. So
Thank you so much.
I kind of set the tone here. As I was saying, if you have not been on every Tuesday this month, we have had the wonderful Kathy Nelson here with this every week. It's just a wonderful cast of characters. We've had all different types from around the photo industry. So today is no different. She's brought along three more wonderful guests. So Kathy, I'm going to kick it over to you and we'll get this thing started.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Derek. Well, welcome everybody. If this is your first time, welcome. This is the fifth of a series that we've done on the whole concept of organizing your photos and getting them back into your life. Today is going to be a little different. I'm really excited to introduce you to three professional photographers or people who come from the professional photography space who have added organizing and helping people manage their photo collection as part of their business services. And so I bet you're intrigued by that. So again, if you haven't met me though, my name is Kathy Nelson. I'm the CEO and founder of the Photo Managers, and we help support entrepreneurs all over the world. This is a fast growing profession of professionals who realize that the consumer, who may be just like you, is completely overwhelmed with all the photos and videos and interesting artifacts, the things that they care most about in their life. And they realize that if they don't do something, that all that history will be lost because things need to be scanned and digitized, and massive amounts of digital photos need to be curated and organized. And yes, artificial intelligence and all those great things are coming, but they can't do all of the things that need to be done. So it's a great way to make some extra money. So I'm excited to introduce you today to these three different photographers who will share their journey with you. There's plenty of time for questions. As always, put them in the chat and we will make sure that they can answer your questions. So to get started, I wanted to introduce Barbie. She's going to actually tell you more about herself, but Barbie has experience as 20 years as a portrait photographer. She's down in Florida, and 3 years as a professional photo organizer, photo manager. So Barbie, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background as a portrait photographer, your love of that, how that got started, and then tell us a little bit about your journey into adding this as part of your services.
Yes, definitely. Hi, everyone. Thank you, B&H, and thank you, Kathy and the Photo Managers, for having me. I'm excited to be here. Again, my name's Barbie, and I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I grew up in Detroit, Michigan, and from there, I moved to Orlando, Florida, where I went to UCF for college. And when I was at UCF, I studied photography and art, and that's kind of where everything started for me. I took darkroom classes, I was shooting film, and I just really fell in love with it while I was at college. So after I graduated from college, I became a portrait photographer, and I've been doing that for 20 years. Fast forward up to about 3 years ago, I had a client and we did a portrait session, and I took him his photos on a flash drive, gave him his photos, and he was like, whoa, wait a minute. What do I do with this? I don't know what to do with them. I don't know how to get to my stuff. So, it's, as a portrait photographer, you help your clients get through their flash drive, but he was like, that's not enough. I don't know how to move my photos around. My photos are a disaster. They're a mess. I'm so frustrated. You have to help me organize my photos. And I was like, well, I don't really do that. But he persisted because he was so frustrated. Like I'm sure many people are with their photo collections and not knowing what to do with them. So that's kind of where it all started for me. I agreed to help him organize his photos. And as a portrait photographer, I already knew photos quite a bit. I had my own structure of organizing, but I didn't realize also how much more there was to learn about it, just as far as what other people do with their photos or what they want to do with their photos that maybe I didn't learn as a portrait photographer. I had my own system down. So that's where I found the Photo Managers. They were really helpful. All the people there are wonderful. There's a great community. So that helped me also kind of figure out how I was going to help other people. But that's basically where it all started for me, was that one client that just was persistent with it. And that got me started.
Well, here's a question. So did you right away say, well, you have to pay me to do that? Or were you kind of like, oh, I'm going to be really nice and do this, as a...
Yeah, that's a good question. I said no at first. So I was just sticking with photography. But yes, he did pay me, but there was a learning curve for me also, because it was the first time I really organized something of someone else's. So, there was definitely a learning curve there. So no, he didn't pay me for the learning curve. I had to figure that out on my own.
But he did pay you to organize it. You didn't.
Yes,
do it. Yeah, he would say, "I'll do that for free."
Yes, definitely.
I also asked Derek to join us, because I thought he's always great with in a conversation. So Derek, feel free to jump in with. I have like a few questions that I've already set, but the audience too that's usually listening, and so feel free to.
Don't worry, Barbie. I'll keep it low.
Oh yeah, he's scaring me now.
Well, so a question that I would be having if I was listening to this too was, well, what percentage of your business is made up of portrait photography now, and then also the photo management, photo organizing, and is it a profitable piece of your business? And what is that? What does that entail?
Right. So right now it's about 50-50, I would say. And this is actually the most difficult part to it, because my first love is portrait photography and being a photographer. So I don't want to lose that. And when you add photo organizing on, and just like any business, it can kind of get a mind of its own. It can get out of control. So I find that the most difficult part, because there's so much to do with photo organizing. I don't want to take away the portrait photography part. So just balancing that out is a little bit difficult. It's going pretty well now, but you have to have a team that can handle some of the photo organizing so that you can still shoot. But that's probably the most difficult part, is just managing the balance between the two.
And are they different are they different clients, or are they the same client a lot of times?
So actually they really go hand in hand really well, because most of my clients starting out, before I even had the word out or did any advertising at all, I just told my portrait clients what I was doing, and a lot of them were really interested right away. So it does go hand in hand. Especially if you're shooting families, because families, they have pictures of their kids. A lot of kids were born before 2001. So it's all going to be film, negatives, slides, prints, and they're already interested in family photos. So most of them are interested in having all of that preserved. So it works well together. And as a photographer, you're so familiar with photos in general anyways. You're familiar with the, Lightroom and Photoshop and photo files. So they definitely go hand in hand.
So what would be an example of, I know I'm asking you a little bit more than I kind of cued you that I would ask you.
I was not prepared for any of these questions.
I'm sorry about
That's
that.
okay.
Well, because I was thinking, well, I would want to know, but, the question is, do they, well, I'll go back to some of this. So what have you really liked about adding the photo organizing services to your business? What's been a positive experience with that?
So my favorite part is just my clients and helping them, because you get to know your photo organizing clients on a whole nother level. Maybe some might say too much, or you just really get to know their whole life story, and it's just such a great connection. And they're so excited and happy with what you're doing, because most of these people have a really hard time. The people that are calling you are really frustrated when they're calling, because they don't know what to do with their stuff. They don't know how to maybe migrate stuff or dedupe their collection, or they're overwhelmed with it being all scattered, and they really don't know who to call. So when they find you and you help them with it, they're so excited and happy about it. And that's my absolute favorite thing about it. It's just all the connections. And I've met a lot of people through the photo managers too. So there's just some great connections that you make with people. And a lot of my portraits are headshots. So I don't get to know a client quite as well. I still love that. And I love my clients there too, but you don't get to know them quite as personally as you do when you're, organizing their whole entire photo collection.
And you mentioned that you have a staff. How many people do you have that work with you?
Right now I have 2.
Okay. And do they do mostly the photo, like scanning the photos or different pieces of it like that?
Yes, I have one that mainly does the scanning, and the other girl that made my lovely slide slide lamp over there. She can do anything. She helps me on photo shoots. I think she has like 500,000 photos in her collection. So she loves photography and is interested in all kinds of areas. She actually has a drone that I would like to have at some point, but she can shoot and she can organize and do a lot of other things also. So yeah, those two help me out a lot.
And then last of all, what advice would you give to somebody, a professional photographer listening, or maybe even just somebody listening in general, about getting started in the business by adding that piece to your business?
Right. As a professional photographer, I would say, and this could apply to anyone also, I would say just pick one thing to start with. Don't go in. There's so many different ways to organize photos as far as scanning or video conversion, consolidating people's collections. So I would pick one area, maybe just pick camera scanning and focus on that. And if you're a photographer, you can reach out to some of your photographer colleagues and friends, and you could also see if they need help just organizing maybe their clients' photos. And so start small with one thing and add that in and learn that, and then go from there. See if you like it and then go from there. So definitely start small. Doesn't get too overwhelming that way. Yeah. So,
all right. Great. Derek, you got any questions there?
Yeah, I actually do have a question, Barbie.
Okay.
Sure. What do you suggest, or what have you done to market outside of the realm of photographers? Obviously, those are the first people that come to mind when we think of archiving photos as photographers, because we take the most pictures. But as far as people who are not involved in photography, but like you said, I mean, people were taking pictures on film for decades, and these photos add up, and it doesn't mean that people don't want to archive. So as far as reaching out to clientele outside of the photography industry, has that been something that you've worked at, or do you find that most of your clients are coming from photography backgrounds?
So most of my clients come from my actual portrait clients. If I'm shooting a family, so they're not really photographers or involved with photography, but I'm already with them and know them and talk to them, and they feel comfortable with me. So it's just really easy to go into helping them with their photo collection. So I would say the majority of my clients come from there, but I've also, just around my town, I have done a few events where I just set up a booth and talk about what I'm doing. And I get a lot of interest just at a little event show around town. I'll put, a little table out with some slides and videos, and all kinds of people stop me and talk about it. So I've gotten a lot of interest that way also. And even younger, believe it or not, a lot of 20-year-olds have stopped by and said, they're shooting film now. Mm-hmm. And they want to find someone that helps them with developing films. So it's coming back around. That's for sure. So,
It's keeping us all employed. It's great.
It's funny how the pendulum swings, right?
I know, right?
Yep, the 80s are coming back.
All right. Well, thank you, Barbie. I really appreciate it. So I mentioned we have 3 different photographers here. So next up is Paul. And Paul is not the person with the camera always, but he has a deep experience with all things photo related. So Paul, why don't you share your background again a little bit, and then I'll ask you the 3 questions, and I'll try not to go off on too many tangents with you, but
How could that be? Yeah. So I actually fell in love with photography as a high schooler, and ended up going to college. I got a degree in photography and spent a while doing sailing photography. I loved it. I grew up in the Seattle area, and so the outdoors and sailing was like a huge draw. Ultimately, I decided I would rather be sailing than taking pictures of people sailing. So my training helped me get into the commercial printing industry, and specifically color separating. So my real training ground kind of went beyond the taking of the pictures, and I had a very successful career doing color separation, scanning for high-end museums, catalogs, and that whole crowd. So I learned a lot about reproducing photos and about the nuances that make up really exciting photos. That got me into a position where I worked for about 5 years at Apple as an Apple genius and as a creative trainer after that. And that's really where all of the pieces kind of came together of my photography background, my graphic arts background, and honestly, working with people. I love to work with people. And what I found working at the Genius Bar, I worked with thousands of people, and every one of them was coming in with some kind of problem. So you learn very quickly about problem solving, but you also learn about what really moves people. I mean, it is amazing the value that people place on their photos. I mean, I've really come to believe that these are basically the bookmarks for our memories. Because as a young person, I remembered everything. You know, I could tell you every movie I went to, every, you know, all of that stuff, right? But there comes a time when you don't remember them, every event quite that well. And photographs are just this amazing portal into our lives. And frankly, you know, in the case of the photo managers, a lot of it are the lives of our forefathers and, you know, the history of our family. And it becomes a very large, important sphere very quickly. So that's where I really got excited about putting all these things together and helping people in a way that I wasn't able to do at the Genius Bar. And so I went out, I started Blue Water Imaging. I joined the photo managers, and the rest is sort of history. So that's really my background. And I think every piece along the way has contributed to where I am now and made this a really interesting ride.
What's fun about Paul is he wrote, I think hopefully we'll put a link in there, but he wrote a great blog post that I really appreciated he's been to many of our conferences. We do annual educational conferences, and this last year was our 11th conference, but he did a great about watching like a child grow to realize we've kind of arrived. Like after 10 years, I started the photo managers over 14 years ago, but in the last 10 years, the consumer has caught up with the fact that they need us, and so have a lot of companies who interact with us. We have relationships with lots of different companies that are looking to photo managers to help them. They're trying to solve the client's problem, but they don't have access to the clients the way that we do. So so Paul, just like, because you wrote that as well, what has been the biggest, what have you noticed in the growth of the recognition that people really do need professionals to help them with their photo collections? And then what is it that you love most about doing that work?
Sure. Well, I think the key thing that I've found is we're at a point, I think we've sort of reached a tipping point where technology rules. I think that back in the day, you know, you picked up a photograph or you looked at a photograph in an album, and the photograph itself, it was like a self-contained memory or a self-contained moment that you know, pinned on your wall and appreciated and so forth. What I've noticed now is that once we went digital, the medium changed, so that when we look at a picture, we're not only looking at the picture, we're looking at the device that is sharing the picture. We're affected by the software that is managing the picture. We're affected by where we're looking at it, which, you know, it could be on a bus, it could be, you know, wherever. And so I really believe that the photos have become a foundation part of this memory experience that we live every day, but it's not the whole thing anymore. And so a lot of my interest now is in, talking to people and helping them understand that it's not just a picture component. It's, you could have a memory movie out of that. You can share it with your family instantly, right? My son, it's a little aside. My son went to film school, and it blew me away to think that the birth of film schools in the late 60s, early 70s, Southern California, for instance, and so forth. It was the very first time that if you wanted to see what other filmmakers had done, so that you kind of understood what was even possible and had been done. That was the very first time in those film schools that anybody had the resources to look at them all together. Before that, it went to your local theater, and when it was gone, it was gone. We didn't have video. We didn't have streaming. There was no way for a film student to get the context of what's even possible. What did so-and-so do? Why was that film so great? I don't know. Have to wait till the next time it comes back to the local theater. So I think one of the things that just excites me to death is if you go on to Instagram now and you look at the quality of the photography that is out there, everyday folks, I mean, I'm overwhelmed by the quality of the pictures. And I think that, part of it is the medium, part of it is the fact that it's so accessible to everybody, and they can see, oh, they did this cool thing with portrait mode. Let me play with that sort of thing. It's a really exciting time, I think, for photography. A lot of big questions, and that really was sort of the genesis of my post, is that it's a new world. There's cool stuff out there. It's very easy to get lost in the middle of all that. And I think that's, as much as anything, that's what I help my clients do, is kind of navigate through this whole thing and say, well, just because your cousin is doing that doesn't mean you have to do that. And so I love, to finish that thought, what I think enjoy as much as anything is that aha moment that you get when you're working with a client, and all of a sudden they go, whoa, that is so neat, or I didn't know I could do that, or, this was taking me forever to get it straightened out, but all I have to do is, X. So I love solving problems for people, and photos are a great place to do it.
That's a cool, yeah, it's great we can, think about how, it's fascinating to think about how we interact with photos and how much that's changed, right? And, but
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
what hasn't changed is, or I think what's even increased is how valuable photos are. I mean, they are and they aren't, right? Sometimes there's this conversation like photos have lost their value because we have so many of them. But at the same time, if somebody lost all of their photos, I can't imagine, it would be the worst day of my life if I lost like access to to my photo collection. I would just be devastated, because it's the story of my life, right? It's, not just my life, but my memories of my kids when they're little, or my parents, or my great grandparents, right? So that's the part where those photo managers kind of step into this new space where we can help people go from that feeling of being overwhelmed, right, to having to kind of putting their arms around it in a way that helps it make sense.
Right.
What advice would you give to anybody who's listening, thinking about, well, I never even knew this was a business or something I could actually do, or,
Well, I'll piggyback. Yeah, I'll piggyback a little bit on Barbie. I think it was really good advice to say find something. It is, this is another part of my conversation, is that the profession has grown so much. There are so many niches within it. really kind of started out as a heritage thing, and scanning old photos. Now I believe we have really three different categories. We have the heritage stuff. We have this living collection that we contribute to every single day. And then of all of that, we create a distilled, a curated legacy collection that we will pass on, that just has the best of the best kind of thing. And I think the advice is, certainly for professional photographers, and in my case, for so many people who are connected to the photo industry. I mean, if you're a photo editor, if you're a photo assistant, if you are any one of audio people, for Pete's sake, video people, there is a place for all of these disciplines within the photo managers, and I think it's going to get even bigger as we work with a generation now who's used to movement, they're used to sound, they're used to snippets of things, and there was a time when the whole live photo thing in Apple Photos was, kind of a gimmick, kind of a whatever. I think they're awesome because 3 seconds is an amazing amount of time to hear somebody's voice when they're doing something, and you can leverage it in some really amazing ways. So what I would say to people is, get into the technology. I mean, it definitely is a technology focused business now, with some common sense layered on top of it. I mean, there still is a lot of personality that needs to go into it. There's, an awareness of family history and heritage and where things are important. But I think the technology is important. You need to know what you're working with, and you need to know what the possibilities are. One thing I really would caution professional photographers about is we all have our favorite stuff, right? We've got you've got the Adobe Premiere people and you've got the Final Cut people, right? And they're like the best. Well, they're not the best for everybody. And I think, standing back a little bit and saying, I know all this stuff, but based on what you're trying to do, I don't care what anybody else is saying, you're going to have the best experience with this. And to me, it's all about the experience. It doesn't matter how good the picture is if you can't find it or can't get to it or can't share it. So, if you're a total fan of some little technology, just be really open-minded about how you can apply that to the people that you work with.
Yeah. Derek, you got any questions for Paul?
I do. Well, first of all, Kathy, I think Paul laid out your next two business ventures, the video managers and the audio managers. So.
I know. I wish we could take the word photo out sometimes, because I know I always try and say we help people manage their photos, videos, and now keepsake collection items, because it is so much more than just the photo piece. Yeah.
We keep expanding now.
Yeah.
Paul, I want to know what is something that you see from someone who does this and who consults people and who helps people get themselves organized. What is a positive thing that an outside perspective can bring? Because a lot of people might be saying, well, nobody knows my photos like I do. So by bringing in an outside entity, I'm losing something, right? But I think an outside perspective can be good. And what is, as someone who has been doing this and has the experience, where is an outside perspective good to bring it in and kind of say, I'm looking at this from the outside looking in, and here's what I say?
It's a good question. I mean, there are many professions where you have outside people come in and offer valuable, insights. So I think that in and of itself is valuable. But, over the years, I've worked with tons of photo editors, for instance, right? And art directors and so forth. And they're, they have that skill set. They know, how things are working out. And what I'm seeing, and Kathy has even arranged many talks around this, is that, we are getting away from the idea of the individual picture as the end, the be all and end all. And so inevitably that becomes a storytelling event. So the idea of picking out, a 20 frame selection that kind of tells the story of an afternoon, or 30 images that tell the story of a wedding, in a way that a stranger might even be willing to look at, right? We're not doing the 180 slide carousel in the living room anymore. There's a higher level we're trying to achieve. So I think that being a good storyteller is a huge part of it. I think the other part is I'm a believer now, because of the number of photos that we take. I believe that every photo has an expiration date, just like stuff at the grocery store. Okay. And some of those photos are going to outlive us, and some of the photos are going to be obsolete tomorrow. And I think that one of the things that I learned at the Genius Bar was it's all about the 10,000 hour thing, that you see enough problems and you know what that problem is and you know how to fix it. And I think that that's the benefit of having somebody like a photo manager who sees a lot of stuff. They've seen it with other families. They've seen, hopefully they've had a long history with a family. And they kind of know who the players are and who's most important. And you learn to think about things that families or people in the moment aren't necessarily focused on, right? And you know that at some point you're working with media that someone is going to look back on 30 years from now, and this photo is going to be important. So I think there's all of that I think an outsider can bring to a collection, and they can also bring to the collection. You really don't need 20 shots of these people standing together, right? Clean it up a little bit and get to the point. And, even to the point of saying, there's no right answer here. You part of it is you're giving people permission to get rid of their, family picture because they've got 20 more almost exactly like it on the same day at the same thing, right? And you say, this is a point where you're gonna remember the experience, but you really don't have to keep all of these. And it's just it's gonna confuse you and lessen your experience down the road. So that's a really long-winded answer of why I think an outsider can help.
Yeah, and it's funny. A lot of our members use like some of I learned recently at workshop, they'll take like big butcher-block paper, especially if they're working with an analog collection, and they draw out a timeline. So they interview a person beforehand. What's your family timeline and things. And then I've always joked, it's not a mystery of what people take photos of. I know we all think we're unique and things, but even when I started after like probably the 50th client opening up the boxes or whatever, you're like, oh, you take pictures of the first day of school, and you take pictures of the holidays that you celebrate. And you take pictures of where you go on vacation, and you take pictures of your pets. And wow, so does Mary, and so does Susie, and so did Johnny, and so did, and also across all cultures, because we have members that do this all over the world. And it really, as human beings, the things that we care about are not that different. It's really a beautiful way of saying we're all a lot more alike than we're different as human beings, because our photos, I think, probably can demonstrate that in a lot of ways. So, all right, Paul, well, thank you. Really appreciate you joining us. And last of all, and last but not least, the person who introduced us to this B&H event series too is Yaakov Did I say that right? Got it right. Good. And so Yaakov is part of a younger, we have like I call them like the young guns, but we have a group of younger men and women, younger folks that are joining us who are offering, bring another whole different perspective to the business. And so Yaakov, welcome. And you tell us about yourself a little bit, your pro photography business, and then where you saw this need in your own family and community and how you got started with us.
All right, awesome. Thanks so much for having me, Kathy and Derek. It's a pleasure to be here. And I started my photography journey about 11, 12 years ago. And then I'll actually give you a little more history that I've actually learned recently, which is really cool. So I bought a camera and I was in 8th grade, I guess it's like 11, 12, I don't know how many years ago, a lot of years ago. Maybe not as much as anyone else here, but
that one is only a decade ago.
Right, for me. And I guess it's all relative, right? And I started taking pictures for my yearbook. I had a Sony Zoom camera. Unfortunately, I lost that actually. I'm still looking for it. I loved that camera. And then I bought a DSLR actually from not from B&H, but my next camera was from B&H. I bought from eBay, a used camera, a Rebel. It's called, like, this is just a beginner camera. I started that for many years, T1i, Rebel T1i. And I started offering people to do pictures for free. So I went over to them. I said, hey, you're having a family party. Can I do pictures for free? For me, I like good food. I was like, hey, this is a great opportunity. I just get some free food, get some cool pictures and have fun. Then I started charging $30 for a shoot, and over time I started developing people who liked me. And then they started, saying, hey, let's see how we could incorporate him into our events. So that's a little bit about my photography history. I've been doing that. I also happen to work for B&H. I am a chat agent. So I'm one of the people behind the screen when you come in to ask questions about cameras and drones. I'm one of the people who help you. So if you ever see Yaakov K, that's me. And I've actually just going back for a little more history. I was in my grandmother's house like 2-3 weeks ago, interviewing her for a reel that I made on Instagram. And I found something from 1916, I'm pretty sure, of my great grandfather in Chicago where he lived. His name was Yaakov Katz, and he was a video camera operator certified by the city of Chicago. It was really, and I have like this stamp on it, and it actually had some funny things. It said he is allowed, or he's certified to operate it, but it doesn't mean that he takes good pictures. So it was kind of funny. But it was really cool to see that. I had no idea my great grandfather did pictures, and my great uncle, actually, I have his camera in my house. He had a Canon, and it's kind of cool. I mean, that I knew about, but it was cool to see, like, I have some family history in photography. Now getting to the photo managers, how I started that. I'm looking for, I had my grandmother's pictures. I'm kind of a sentimental person, not as much as other people, but I consider myself a sentimental person. And I went to my grandmother's house. She had a grandparents' house, and she had albums and boxes of stuff. My uncles, when they moved her out of her 6-bedroom house to a dumpster and chucked almost all of her stuff. I'm so grateful they did not chuck that, and I was able to get that. And so she had thousands of pictures, and she didn't do anything with them. My grandmother is the type of person who, anywhere she'll be, she'll have her camera. Now it's her iPhone. We finally transitioned her over. But it's she always has pictures. She always took pictures. Now she spent many thousands of dollars because she had pictures, and I'm pretty sure the number is about 14,000, because I threw out half of them because they're all doubles. So just imagine how much money she spent on that, and years of collecting those. So I was able to. I bought a scanner. I said, hey, from B&H, and I said, hey, why don't we just scan them for you? At that point, it was too daunting. So I did some, and then I gave it to another person to scan for me. Then I did my uncles, I did my mother's, and I've always had in the back of my head, let me see if I can make this into a business. Recently, I started doing it, and I was reaching out to people on LinkedIn. I met a fellow member of the photo managers, and he's like, hey, why don't you join this organization? And I was like, okay, I don't know what it is, but I'll be happy to try it out, And that was like I don't know, maybe a month or two ago. Keep saying a month. So it's probably like 3 months ago. And I've had an amazing experience. I don't work for the photo managers, but I'm just here to really tell everyone that I had an amazing experience. I'm having an amazing experience, and I want to tell you a little about that experience. There's a few things that I benefit from. Number one is the education. They have classes, so you can actually educate yourself properly of industry standards. The benefit of this compared to photography is that in photography, I never had that. So I had to call people up. I'm on a lot of chats, and it was kind of confusing, what is industry standard and how to get trained properly. So this was one benefit, that I took it slowly. I'm still doing it. I'm almost done, but I do a few minutes a day of just learning industry standards and how to properly scan pictures and also how to organize them digitally. Another benefit, which is huge for me, is they have a private Facebook group for the members, which is awesome because a lot of people share their experience. So I don't have to go through the same issues that they went through, which is amazing because I already have had some of the issues. And now I'm thinking, oh, let me go to the Facebook group and see what they say. There's a combined many years of knowledge on there. Today, I just searched up contracts and they have things from 2 years ago. Information on contracts never changes, So instead of me trying to figure it out and paying a lawyer thousands of dollars, I could just go back there. So that's just a little bit about, that's a little background about what's going on with me.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And it's been fun bringing a whole new perspective to the business. Derek, you got some questions for Yaakov?
I do. I want to know, Yaakov, how has this helped in your own photography? I mean, I do a lot of photo critiques, and I tell people all the time, because people don't want to listen to critiques that aren't their photos. And I say, you can learn so much from hearing other people's photos critiqued, and that's made me a better photographer. I would kind of think the same applies when you're looking through people's archives and looking through all people's photos and helping people decide what to put off to the side and what to keep and hang on to. How has this helped you as a photographer?
Good question. So I would love to show you some pictures that I have of clients, but they're confidential. But I will say that there are some awesome pictures from the film days of just there's someone we just finished her albums. It was 50 albums, which is about 15,000 pictures. That's a lot of pictures. It took us 100 hours to do. Just finished it last night. So she had an amazing picture from, I don't know what country it was, but it was just in the snow, and it was very clear, sharp. And I guess I could probably say that I learned more about what not to do than what to do in pictures, if that makes sense.
Totally. So it's easy to learn from other people's mistakes or in seeing stuff that, and I've also found, in looking at other people's photos, for me personally, something that I would never try, or that I would say, if it were my photo, I'd be like, no, this doesn't work. This is distracting. And this is drawing but then you see someone else do it and you're like, wow, that's a really cool shot. And you're like, I never would have, especially taking portraits from various angles or shots that aren't really traditional. I think a lot of photographers look at photography in this very traditional sense. And then you have that minority of rule breakers that really kind of give a lot of the law-abiding photographers, the people that stay right by the book, it gives them that kind of, it's okay to kind of color outside the lines and bend the rules a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's actually funny that we're talking about this. It's a bit of a tangent, but whatever. There's a guy I know, his name is David Levinger. He's an amazing photographer. He probably started less than 6 months ago. And I got to show him this after because he's going to be so happy I'm talking about him. He has a Sony camera, and I see his posts and they're amazing. His pictures are unbelievable. He does his baseball pictures. He also works for a band now. And I'll tell you something that was really cool that hit me. He has a new perspective. For me, I'm almost embarrassed to say this, but locked into my perspective. I have my amazing poses that work, my poses that don't work, and I just do them and they work, When I see new poses, it's helpful. But I'll give you an example of something that I saw he did. He actually he's working for musicians who play at weddings. So he actually got a cool perspective. He got them walking into the weddings, with their headphones and their guitars. When someone comes into the industry and they don't, and they have a new perspective, that hot perspective, it's really eye-opening and refreshing. He just posted pictures. He was at the Cyclones game. He was in the dugout, and he told me he was battling with the sun because the sun was getting lower and it was warm. But he was able to use the sun as a really beautiful, coloring and lighting, as opposed to using it as a way to hurt his pictures. The reason I'm saying that is because I think that having that outsider perspective, kind of what Paul was saying, also someone who is fresh, who has never seen what you have seen, really can open your mind and help you to discover new possibilities that at least I didn't think was possible.
You know, what's interesting in that topic, not just in curating photos or, you know, looking at as a professional photographer, but even this field, you know, creating this organization, this business. I didn't come from a professional photography background. I come more from a storyteller background. So it's amazing. So for me, it's always about the story piece of it. And so, you know, again, we've been doing this for 14 years. We have members all over the world at this point, and I've been at many conferences and have interacted with Sony and, you know, but I come in with this whole different perspective. Like I've turned the idea that the consumer families want their photo collection curated was not something that the photo industry was ever considering, right? I've sat at I was on the board of the Imaging Alliance, and I'd sit at these board meetings, and it would be Sony and Nikon and Canon, you know, all the big camera manufacturers and things, and they'd be all worried about like the consumer, you know, not buying as many cameras, but nobody was looking at what the value of the photograph was to the consumer, right? Because they were coming in with this one perspective, and it's just such a bigger field than that, right? There's just so many different, like, it's fascinating what you were saying, like bringing the photographer, like them walking in is part of a story, right? That's a story of like before the wedding begins, you know, the band has to come in, right? Who are they? Where are they coming from? So
it's been great.
Thank you, Yaakov.
I love to see, Kathy, and just piggybacking off that real quick, that storytelling has come to the forefront of photography, which I think is such a great thing. And now you're seeing those very same camera companies start to embrace storytellers rather than photographers, where it's like, you know, it's easy to take a photographer, give them a camera, and they're going to do whatever. But to take a storyteller, or to take somebody who just has a story, who may not even be a storyteller, give them the tool to tell their story, teach them how to use it, or give them the means to use it, or just let them take it and learn on their own, I think is just such an awesome thing that it's a great direction that the industry has kind of taken as of recently. You're seeing a lot more focus on the stories and not so much the images.
Right. I mean, when I started this, it was the idea that we are a people of stories. And as human beings, the way we tell our stories today is through visual media, through our photos, right? And so as professional photo organizers or photo managers, so much more interesting. I always hate the word photo organizing. Sometimes I feel like it's like watching paint dry. Really, we're help people tell their stories, right? What Paul and Yaakov and Barbie, really what we're doing is when you get to know your clients, like a family member comes to you with, you know, they might start out like having you convert some of their family home movies. And next thing they know, you know, you get excited about, wow, this is so cool of your you know, I had never heard my father's voice in, you know, 30 years. And next thing you know, they're like, well, I have all this. What do you think about this? Or I have old letters, you know, do you think there's value to this? And then as the professional, you're able to help them go through all those amazing things and then turn around and create a lasting legacy for like Paul was saying, like, what are the best of the best that you want the next generation to see? So before we go to questions, which I hope there are some, I'm just going to share my screen for a minute because we are doing this as a way. Oops, let's see, we can enable my sharing there.
Yes, and we will use this time to re-invite people to send your questions, and this now is the time to do. I see we have a couple pouring in, but if you guys do have any questions on any aspect of photo organizing, definitely get them in.
Still need to have the screen let's see, there we go. Thank you. So we are interested, we are growing, right? And we're trying to get the word out. Most people say, oh my God, I didn't know there was such a thing as this, but there is. So if you're interested, this is intriguing to you. Membership to the photo managers, it's $175 a quarter or $599 annual. And as Yaakov said, there's we do monthly training webinars, we have certification, we have this amazing community private Facebook group. We believe a rising tide lifts all boats. We're collaborative, not competitive. People come from so many different backgrounds. I just certified a member the other day. She's a chemical engineer who works for Johnson & Johnson and makes contact lenses. But I was like, you know, in her day job, but she loves photos. She's always been the family person. And so she does this as a side business. So, I mean, the variety of people that come into this as a second act career kind of idea is fascinating. And if you join by, what we have here, I forget, join by June 15th, I have written a book called the Business Roadmap to Professional Photo Organizing. It's all about how to get started, how to find clients, how do you know how much to charge. But we also have we've just implemented this where we have peace of mind tech support. So we actually do have you can actually work with, if you get stuck and you're worried that you don't know the technology and stuff, we actually have a tech team that will help you. And so we give you a full year subscription to tech support. So again, you just put a note in the B&H in the checkout time, and we'd love to welcome you to the photo managers. So I'll stop sharing. And so let's go back to questions. Do we have questions that have come in?
Yes, we do have a question from Jeff joining us here on Zoom. A general idea of the cost and how much you charge for the service for the people on the other side.
So I think I just answered the cost for that, but go ahead. I'll let each of you answer. Jack, go ahead.
I was actually going to wonder who's going to answer first. Okay, I'm already on, so I'll just talk. So pretty much the way it works is you charge. The way I have been charging is I charge per picture. So it's usually in the ballpark of 60 cents, somewhere around there. And also then post that, there's also something called like consulting. So before and after, sometimes we have to sit down for a few hours, and depending on really how much people want we can make photo books, all in the idea of telling your story, using the pictures. So that's also a consultation fee. And it is an investment for the client and the customer. But the difference is that the reason that people want this is because once it's too late, there is no going back, and that's priceless. My grandfather, unfortunately, is not well, and his stories are no longer tellable, so that's just something that I learned.
Now, you guys are working, I'm guessing, whoever wants to jump on this, I'm kind of just gonna take that last question and run with it a little bit. Is it more on like an a la carte, and you're working with clients to say, hey, what is it that you want? Let's work something out here. And you have more of like a standard price structure for things that are offered within, but I can say, okay, I want to give you 3 albums. This is what I look to get out of it.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely a la carte, as far as there's more like a scanning price for individual scans, and then a video price for individual video conversion. But there's definitely an hour consulting price, because that comes into play if you're scanning pictures, but then some people want every photo named differently, or you're making an album out of it, and then it goes to an hourly rate after that.
And I think for the people out there watching and listening, it's like, we don't often consider, when you're getting, we don't often consider consulting in the creative genre consulting. It's like when we're talking other businesses, it's like, it's something that, I want to bring it up because I just had a conversation with a photographer friend of mine the other day. And it's like, I think people reach out for creative consulting thinking it's just kind of like, oh, well, I only pay you if I'm, you're taking pictures for me, if you're doing something creative for me. But that information that you're giving, that expertise, that's what you're paying for. You're paying for somebody to tell you, hey, look, this is what I can do for you. Sitting down and going over options and talking with somebody, that's time, that's money, which I'll just throw it out there just preemptively, because I think you always have in the creative side of things, people are like, no, there's no consulting. I'm like, yes, there is consulting. Yes. There's work, and there's thought that goes into it, and it's your expertise in doing this. Kathy, you said for 14 years, for me to have a conversation with you and not expect that I'm going to pick your brain and get some ideas without paying for it is.
And that's kind of what we at the photo managers, and I'll let Paul answer in a second here because I know he has some input, but that's been important to us from the beginning, right? Is to raise the level of professionalism with certification and things, and then also set standards in the industry that isn't for free, because you've taken the time to learn all these things. You have to pay, people need to pay. And usually from the hourly fee, we recommend that you research what the average hourly fee for service providers are in your market. It's going to range anywhere from a low of $45 or $55, very low, all the way to like $150. And then, depends on where you live in Chicago, LA, right? It's going to be a higher fee. And from there, you're kind of setting your rates that way. But Paul, go ahead. And if you have any input too, in terms of because this is a big conversation among our members. We do an annual conference called Profitability Live, where we talk all about pricing. And we're actually, this year, we'll be doing case studies where we'll take different professional photographers taking the same case and displaying how they price and estimate the project. But Paul, what would you say on that too?
Yeah, I would say it's, it's certainly something everybody is eager to know. I will say it is all over the place, in much the same way that professional photography is. I mean, it's very much. It may not have been true a few years ago, but I think we're now getting to the point where you have people with experience, you have people with a support team, you have people who are, focused on different aspects of it. And, you're also essentially paying for one's experience, so, when if you're buying photography services, you're not really buying photography, you're buying photographer, right? Every one of us, this is sort of the essence of brand identity. That the saying I always love is, there are no unique oh shoot, I lost it. No unique messages, only unique messengers. And I think, in any creative endeavor, and frankly, photo management is kind of this odd mix of, there's a huge production value associated with it. There's a huge judgment value involved with it. And honestly, since I've been part of the photo managers, we've gone through probably at least 4 generations of media. There still were a few floppy disks, and then we went to CDs. Oh, that's going to be great. We've got CDs that are rated for 100 years, right? And 10 years later, you can't read them. And, then you've got, well, what is the digital answer? What is, and so a lot of what we're involved with is that, and it's hard to put a price on it. It varies a lot by the use case that our customers present to us, because there certainly are people who simply want to get it digitized. And more we have very high-end customers who they're looking for an ongoing relationship. I mean, just because you get this batch of stuff digitized and organized doesn't mean that's the end of it, because I always suggest to people, go to your iPhone and punch in 2020 and 2019. How many photos a year do you take? Are you a 2,000 a year person? Are you a 5,000 a year person? Are you a 10,000 a year person? And if you start adding those up, the whole idea of, oh, I have way too many pictures. I've heard that from someone who has 5,000 a year, or 5,000 total pictures, to people who have 50,000 pictures, and they both think it's too many. And yet there's somebody else out there who has 500,000, right? And they won't get rid of any of them. So when somebody comes to us as they want an estimate on a project, they want to understand what's involved, there's a whole litany of questions that we have to understand. And ultimately, it comes down to the technology that we've invested in, the education that we've invested in, and what people want, what their expectation is about that job, and how much time it takes to accomplish that. So I know that's a terrible answer to your question, but I think it's true, and I think anybody who's been a professional photographer for a while would understand the dynamic. It's very similar up to a point, and then you have even more variables that are out there.
Perfect. Now, we had a question came in from Elizabeth. She says, I'm assuming I missed this, as it was probably already discussed. And again, if you haven't checked out the other parts of this series, we have dropped them in the comment section for you. But is it better to start broadly and narrow down to a smaller group as you start sorting?
I mean, I'll jump in on that. Over the years, I think the consensus has become, not saying it's best practice, practices, it is a good practice, is to start by consolidating everything. If we're talking about, this whole big project. And the reason for that is we've seen cases where as much as half the photos are duplicates. And so, and this is especially true as we've moved from analog to digital management, that people somewhere along the line, they get the message that you need to back it up, but then they overdo it. And so all of a sudden you have duplicates of duplicates of duplicates. And fortunately, one of the things that has become much, much easier over time is duplicate detection. And it's even built into Apple Photos if you're an Apple person. So I think common sense and experience says, start by identifying where everything is. If it's on Shutterfly, if it's on, in a hard drive in your drawer, if it's on flash drives that you got, which, by the way, speaking to professional photographers, please, number one, give your photos to your customers in some kind of media that is not going to get lost in the back of a drawer or in somebody's pocket. I love the convenience of flash drives and the cost of flash drives, but you're also risking the fact that it's going to go away and or get lost, or somebody will say, oh my God, here's a flash drive. Well, I need to copy this movie over here, so I'm just going to copy stuff on it, right? So come up with something that is substantial enough or obvious enough that it's not going to get trashed or marked enough. And the other thing is encourage people to add that to their primary library. My wife is a portrait photographer, has been for 20 years. And, I sat next to somebody at a library talk who's one of her customers, and said, oh, are you enjoying those pictures? And he goes, oh yeah, I love those pictures. They're awesome. The best pictures of, my kids that anybody's ever taken. And I said, well, great. Where do you have them? And you go, oh, I think they're in a drawer someplace. And I'm going, no, put them in your library, enjoy them, And so we've kind of merged some of our tasks here, so that one of the parts after the photo shoot is we get on the phone and say, okay, now you've got these, we're going to get them in your library so you can enjoy them, and we're going to make sure that you've got a backup someplace, so God forbid if that primary library goes away, we're going to do that. And like Barbie said, that kind of interaction can also lead to an extra revenue stream and a closer relationship with your clients. So
perfect. And we had a question from, I hope I'm not butchering this name, Rochelle. Is there a reason to keep the pictures after they are scanned? That's a good question. I mean, look, in the past, I would have said, always hold on to them. But once you scan them, I mean, I'm guessing there's some people out there that won't have a need for the actual physical photos. What do you guys say? Opinions?
I give my opinion, then I don't know, Barbie, if you, but from a best practice, we would say, you should, your printed photos can remain the best backup over, once they're scanned, they're digitized, as long as if you're following the 3-2-1 backup, which is part of our best practices, that you need 3 copies on 2 different devices. But personally, I believe that eliminate 80%, but save the 20% that matter the most as a backup. That's me personally, but I don't know about Barbie or
right.
Yaakov.
Yeah, I tell my clients mainly what's going to make them feel comfortable. And I know some of them, they want to get rid of all of them. So I suggest Again, you know, getting rid of some of those dupes, you don't want to hold on to really crappy photos. So if you can, you know, go through them a little bit, but I suggest passing them on to family members. Some of my clients that really don't feel comfortable with getting rid of them, they just put them in the attic, which it's not a good place to put them until they're scanned. But once they're scanned, she just went and stored them all in the attic and got them out of her house and her closet and everything, because she just couldn't bear to throw them away. So I don't want to tell someone to throw them out if, you know, they're going to regret doing that in the future too. So I always talk to all of my clients and find out what's most important to them, how they feel about stuff, because they all do feel a little bit differently about it. So I try to find out what is going to make them comfortable and what they, you know, are going to be okay with doing. And that goes as far as getting rid of their printed photos, but also just the way that they're going to view their final collections. Everyone had, if I put my clients' photos on SmugMug and they never use SmugMug, they'll never look at them. So I can't make those decisions for my clients. I always find out, where do you use your photos and where are you comfortable and what is going to fit your lifestyle. And that's where I'm going to organize your photo library. So hope that helps.
That's a great point. You know, I think it's really like we say with anything else, it's not necessarily what's best, it's what's best for you. If something, you're not going to look at something, you never use something, it's easy to say, oh yeah, this is great, but you never use it and say, oh, but I'll learn to use it. No, you won't. We're creatures of habit. So I think that's a great point. And Kathy, I hope I don't give you anxiety when so this is not a good place to store my
But you have it with you.
They're sitting in the cooler.
It's a cooler.
This is probably not the best. Do not store your prints in a cooler, even if it's a really cool Fujifilm.
Those are very cool.
Container. Wow, this was great. Kathy, we did it. We wrapped this whole thing up. Lovely. Again, Yaakov, thank you for making this happen. It's always cool to see how events like this come together. And I think that just shows the spirit of what we do here at B&H and the event space, and the photo community in general is just a really awesome community with people coming together to share their expertise, their knowledge, and help other people find the passion in it. And by photo organizing, it takes away a lot of the headaches, the anxiety. And it really, you know, like Paul, your blog post right there in the beginning of Paul's blog post, and we dropped the link. If you guys haven't checked it out, please do so. It's like your kids grow up, and sometimes, you know, you get caught up and you look and it's like, wow, my kids are graduating. Did I enjoy the ride? You get so caught up in things. And I think one of the great things about photo organizing is allowing you to enjoy the ride and putting the fun back in taking photos and capturing memories and capturing moments, which is where it should be. So Kathy, I'll let you give some final closing words if you have any here, but I want to thank you and everybody you've had on over the past couple of weeks for this wonderful series.
Yeah, thank you. It's been I'll miss you, Derek. It's been like, you know, every week we've gotten to know each other, but and your team.
What am I going to do next Tuesday?
I know, right? Well, hopefully we'll be back doing some more, but thank you. I want to thank all the guests. For those of you that have watched everything, you can see we have there's so many other members, like it's hard to know who do I invite for these kind of opportunities. So we're a really warm, welcoming community. We're here for you, whether you want to do it as a business, you need help with your photos. If you want to, you can set up, most of our members will do like a consultation. You want to set up a call with me, you're welcome to. But at the end of the day, it's just enjoy the process of taking those photos, sharing those stories, and then just thinking about making sure that you're doing something with them before they get lost into the future. I think that's the message that we want to leave. But it's been a pleasure getting to know everybody, and thank you so much for having us.
Yes, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, of course, to all of our viewers
Thank
out
you.
there for tuning in, and we'll get Kathy back on.
We'll be
as
back.
long as you promise, you know, you gotta bring more great.
I got a whole cast of characters.
There you go. Bring the cast of characters. Then it'll just be us having a conversation. Nobody wants to see me on camera. They saw me on camera today. They're like, "What did you guys run out of options?"
We could do a whole series of like, what are the most crazy photos you found in somebody's photo collection? I don't know. We can do all sorts of things.
I love it. I like where this is going. I like where this is going.
We could go.
Yes.
All sorts of things.
Well, we will continue to brainstorm off camera. And to all of you, a huge thank you again. Of course, all of our content is archived. If you haven't checked out our new YouTube channel, just go on YouTube, type in B&H Event Space, and you'll find our content there. If you're on Facebook, we're on Facebook as well, and Vimeo. not to be left out. But huge thank you to everybody who was a guest on today's event and over the last month with this series. But that is it. That's all we got right for you now. Another rendition of the B&H virtual event space and the books. Catch y'all next time.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, guys.